I am the youngest child in a middle-class family from Georgia. My older brother Jackson was always the golden child who received special treatment. After 3 years of minimal contact with my family, I just got a call that shocked me to my core. Jackson had gone bankrupt and drained our parents' retirement funds. Now they are demanding that I support them for the rest of their lives. I was speechless. Before I continue with this heartbreaking story, let me know where you are watching from, and hit subscribe to support me through this journey. Growing up in suburban Atlanta, our family looked picture-perfect from the outside. My father worked as a bank manager, while my mother taught elementary school. But inside our home, the dynamics were far from balanced. Jackson, 5 years my senior, was treated like royalty, while I was often an afterthought. The contrast in how we were treated became apparent during childhood celebrations. On his birthdays, Jackson would receive lavish parties with dozens of friends, expensive gifts, and custom cakes. My birthdays typically featured a small store-bought cake, and maybe 1 or 2 friends if I was lucky. I learned not to expect much, silently accepting that this was just how things were in our family. School achievements highlighted the disparity even further. Despite consistently earning straight A's and participating in academic competitions, my accomplishments were treated as expected rather than celebrated. My parents would glance at my report card, give a quick nod, and file it away. Meanwhile, Jackson would bring home C's and B's to enthusiastic praise. Dad would ruffle his hair, saying, "Those are solid grades, son. You are balancing academics and being well-rounded just right." The phrase that haunted my childhood was, "Why can't you be more like your brother?" It didn't matter that my interests and strengths differed from his. Jackson excelled at sports and socializing, while I gravitated toward mathematics, reading, and music. Instead of recognizing our individual talents, my parents constantly tried to mold me into a carbon copy of my brother. The graduation gift disparity still stings when I think about it. When Jackson graduated high school with a mediocre GPA, our parents surprised him with a brand new Ford Mustang. They made a big show of handing him the keys at his graduation party, telling everyone how proud they were of their son. 3 years later, when I graduated as valedictorian, I received a hearty congratulations and continued taking the bus to my summer job. One particular memory stands out vividly from when I was 12. I had been practicing piano diligently for months, preparing for my first recital. The day had finally arrived, and I was both nervous and excited to show my family how much I had improved. That same afternoon, Jackson had a regular season football game. Without hesitation, my parents chose to attend his game instead. I performed to an audience of strangers, with my piano teacher giving me a sympathetic pat on the shoulder afterward. When I returned home, no one asked how it went. By 15, I had become fiercely independent out of necessity. I secured a part-time job at the local department store, working weekends and after school. My parents barely noticed my absence, as family activities typically revolved around Jackson's schedule anyway. While they drove him to practices and games, I quietly navigated public transportation and balanced work with schoolwork. Every dollar I earned went straight into a savings account I had opened, with the help of a trusted adult neighbor. I knew that if I wanted to attend college, I would need to finance much of it myself. While my parents openly discussed their plans to fully fund Jackson's education at whatever school he chose, they made vague comments about state schools being perfectly fine for me. My saving grace during high school was Miss Hartwell, my advanced mathematics teacher. She noticed my aptitude for numbers and took me under her wing, offering guidance both academically and personally. She was the first adult who saw my potential without comparing me to Jackson. "What do you want to do with your life, Brenton?" she asked during our first mentoring session. The question startled me because no one had ever asked about my dreams before. She helped me research scholarship opportunities and encouraged me to apply to competitive programs that matched my strengths. When I confided in her about my home situation, she didn't dismiss my feelings or tell me to be grateful for what I had. Instead, she acknowledged that favoritism was real and damaging, while encouraging me to channel my hurt into determination rather than resentment. By senior year, I had accumulated enough savings and scholarship offers to see a clear path forward. While Jackson had dropped out of college after 3 semesters of partying despite full financial support from our parents, I was charting my own course with minimal family backing. The inequality was obvious to everyone except those who perpetuated it. My acceptance into Georgia Tech with a partial scholarship marked the beginning of my independent adulthood. The scholarship covered about 60% of my tuition, and I was responsible for the rest plus housing and expenses. While other freshmen were adjusting to being away from home for the first time, I was already accustomed to fending for myself. College life meant juggling multiple responsibilities. I maintained 2 part-time jobs alongside a full course load in computer engineering. Weekdays I worked at the campus tech support desk, and weekends found me at a local electronics store. My visits home dwindled to holidays only, and even those were uncomfortable affairs where conversations centered on Jackson's latest ventures, while my academic achievements received cursory acknowledgement. My junior year, I secured a competitive internship with a growing tech company that would eventually hire me full-time. When I shared this news during Thanksgiving dinner, my father responded with, "That's nice. Did you hear Jackson might be starting a business?" The conversation immediately shifted to my brother's nebulous entrepreneurial plans that never materialized. Perhaps the most telling event was my college graduation. After 4 years of maintaining a 3.9 gigapascals while working throughout, I had earned the right to walk across that stage with pride. I had invited my parents months in advance, confirming multiple times that they would attend. 2 days before the ceremony, my mother called to explain that they couldn't make it because Jackson had an important job interview in another state and they needed to drive him there for moral support. I sat among my peers at graduation watching other families celebrate together, feeling the empty seats beside me like physical wounds. Post-graduation, I moved into a modest 1-bedroom apartment and began my career as a software developer. My starting salary was reasonable, but not extravagant. I lived frugally, cooking at home, driving a used car, and avoiding unnecessary expenses. Each month, I allocated portions of my income to savings, investments, and retirement accounts, something my parents had never taught me, but that I had learned through online resources and financial books. While I was building my foundation brick by brick, Jackson was bouncing between jobs, never staying anywhere longer than 6 months. According to family updates I received secondhand, he was always leaving because the company didn't recognize his potential or because his boss was unreasonable. With each departure, our parents provided a financial safety net, helping with his rent when he was between jobs and funding his next great idea. My career progression accelerated faster than I had anticipated. My diligence, problem-solving skills, and ability to work effectively with teams led to a promotion within my first 18 months. By my 3rd year, I had moved to a senior developer position with a substantial salary increase. I began diversifying my investments, building emergency funds, and making sound financial decisions that would benefit my future. Around this time, Jackson met Amanda, a woman who shared his appreciation for status symbols and luxury goods. Their courtship was brief and lavish, with expensive dates and extravagant gifts. Their wedding was the social event of the season for my parents' social circle, with no expense spared. As a wedding present, my parents purchased the newlyweds a 4-bedroom house in an upscale neighborhood despite having tapped into their own retirement savings to do so. Within a year of his marriage, Jackson announced his first business venture, a high-end fitness center targeting corporate executives. He had no experience in fitness or business management, but my parents immediately invested a significant sum to help him get started. When I gently suggested during a rare phone call that perhaps they should be more cautious with their retirement funds, my mother accused me of jealousy and not wanting to see my brother succeed. The fitness center closed within 8 months, having never turned a profit. Undeterred, Jackson launched a luxury meal delivery service the following year, once again with substantial financial backing from our parents. This venture lasted slightly longer but ultimately met the same fate. Each failure was blamed on market conditions, unreliable partners, or bad timing, never on Jackson's lack of business acumen or financial responsibility. Meanwhile, my personal life was flourishing alongside my career. I met Lauren at a tech conference where we were both presenters. Her intelligence, warmth, and genuine interest in others immediately attracted me. Unlike my family, she listened when I spoke and celebrated my accomplishments without qualification. After dating for 2 years, we moved in together and began building our life as partners in every sense. Lauren understood my complicated family dynamics without judgment. Having grown up with supportive but strict parents who valued financial responsibility, She was sometimes bewildered by my parents' continuing financial support of Jackson despite his repeated failures. "Why don't they see that they are enabling him?" she would ask, after hearing about another bailout. I had no answer except that Jackson had always been the sun around which our family orbited. By my late 20s, Lauren and I had purchased a modest but comfortable home in a good neighborhood. We both contributed to the down payment from our individual savings, took on a reasonable mortgage, and made improvements to the property ourselves to save money. We lived well within our means, took affordable vacations, and continued building our financial security. From the outside, we appeared to be a typical young professional couple, steadily working toward our goals. A particularly painful memory was created during a family gathering for my father's 60th birthday. Jackson and Amanda arrived in a brand-new luxury SUV, despite his latest business having recently folded. During dinner, he regaled everyone with stories about his upcoming venture into cryptocurrency trading, which our parents listened to with rapt attention. When conversation briefly turned to my recent promotion to team lead, my father commented, "It's good that you have a stable job, son. Not everyone can be an entrepreneur like your brother." The dismissal of my accomplishments was clear even as I financially outpaced Jackson by a significant margin. That night driving home, Lauren squeezed my hand and said, "They have no idea what they have in you. Their loss." Her words comforted me, but the familiar ache of being the overlooked child never fully disappeared. I had built a good life, despite not because of my family. I maintained minimal contact after that gathering, calling on holidays and birthdays, but avoiding deeper involvement. It was easier that way, less painful. Little did I know that this distance would soon be tested in ways I could never have anticipated. The call came on a Tuesday morning. I was in my home office preparing for a virtual meeting with my team when my mother's name flashed across my phone screen. My stomach tightened instantly, a visceral reaction to years of disappointment. For a moment, I considered letting it go to voicemail, but something told me to answer. Mom sounded older, her voice strained. "Brenton, we need to talk. It's important." The gravity in her tone was unusual enough to make me cancel my meeting. What I heard next left me stunned. Jackson had declared bankruptcy. His latest venture, a luxury travel agency specializing in exotic getaways for executives, had collapsed spectacularly, leaving behind a mountain of debt. But that wasn't the worst of it. Over the years, my parents had systematically emptied their retirement accounts to fund Jackson's businesses. They had also taken out a second mortgage on their home to provide capital for his travel agency. Now, with the business gone and Jackson unable to repay them, they were facing the loss of their home and had no financial cushion for their retirement years. I sat in silence, trying to process the magnitude of the situation. My mother continued, her voice cracking occasionally. "They are threatening foreclosure, Brenton. We don't know what to do. Dad is 72 now. He can't go back to work, and my teaching pension isn't enough." Before I could fully formulate a response, my phone beeped with another call. Jackson. I told Mom I would call her back and switched over. My brother, unlike our mother, showed no vulnerability. His voice was demanding, almost accusatory. "So Mom told you what's going on, right?" Jackson didn't wait for my confirmation. "Look, things got complicated with the business. The economy tanked, my partner screwed me over, and now everything is a mess. Mom and Dad are freaking out about the house and money and all that." I remained silent, waiting for what I knew was coming. "The thing is," Brenton, Jackson continued, "you're doing well, right? That tech job must pay pretty good by now." He paused, as if considering his next words carefully, but then barreled ahead. "They need help, and you're in a position to provide it. They took care of us our whole lives. Now it's our turn to take care of them." The word "our" hung in the air, laden with irony. There had never been an hour when it came to parental attention or support. I finally spoke. "What exactly are you suggesting, Jackson?" His answer was breathtaking in its entitlement. "You need to step up. Buy out their mortgage, set up a monthly allowance for them. Lauren makes good money too, right? Between the two of you, it should be manageable. I would help if I could, but I am underwater right now." When I didn't immediately agree, Jackson grew agitated. What kind of son refuses to help his parents? After everything they did for us, his selective memory was almost impressive. Before ending the call, he added a final barb. "I always told them you were selfish, focused only on yourself and your perfect little life. Guess I was right." Within hours, Amanda called too. Her usually polished voice was sharp with contempt. "You disgust me, Brenton. Your parents are about to be homeless and you're what counting your money. Family takes care of family." She hung up before I could respond. The next few days were a blur of research and revelation. I spoke with my parents' financial advisor, who reluctantly confirmed what I suspected. Over 15 years, they had invested over $800,000 in Jackson's failed ventures. Their retirement accounts were completely depleted. The second mortgage on their home had put them underwater, owing more than the property was worth. More disturbing were the credit card statements I convinced my mother to share with me. While claiming financial hardship, Jackson and Amanda had maintained their lavish lifestyle. Luxury car payments, designer clothing purchases, and expensive vacations, all charged in the months leading up to the bankruptcy. They had known the business was failing, yet continued spending as if nothing was wrong. When I presented this evidence during a tense family meeting at my parents' home, the reaction was explosive. Jackson accused me of spying and invading privacy. My father defended him, insisting that appearances were important in the business world. My mother wept silently, avoiding my gaze. The conversation took an even more disturbing turn when my father suggested that the solution was obvious. "You and Lauren should sell your house," he said matter-of-factly. "You could move into something smaller and use the equity to help us keep our home. After all, you are young enough to rebuild. We don't have that luxury." I was speechless. The suggestion that Lauren and I should sacrifice our financial security, that we should dismantle what we had carefully built through hard work and responsible choices to save them from consequences of their own making, was beyond comprehension. When I finally found my voice, I asked the question that had been building for years. Why is it always me who has to sacrifice? When has Jackson ever been asked to give up anything? The silence that followed was deafening. Then Jackson stood up, pointing his finger at me. "You owe them everything. They gave you life, education, a home. The least you can do is make sure they don't end up on the street." He conveniently ignored that I had largely funded my own education and had received minimal support compared to him. My mother finally spoke, her voice small. "Brenton children have obligations to their parents. It is just how family works." Her words cut deep, not because they were true, but because they revealed how fundamentally one-sided she believed family obligations to be. As I prepared to leave, Jackson issued a thinly veiled threat. "If you walk away now, everyone will know what kind of person you really are. All our relatives, all our family, friends. I will make sure they know how you abandoned Mom and Dad when they needed you most." Driving home that night, I felt physically ill. The weight of familial expectation, manipulation, and guilt pressed down on me. I was caught between the rock of family obligation and the hard place of self-preservation. Lauren waited up for me, her face concerned as I recounted the meeting. She listened without interruption, then held me, as the tears I had been holding back finally came. "You know this isn't your responsibility to fix." "Right," she whispered. "Their financial decisions were their own. And Jackson is a grown man who should face the consequences of his actions." I knew she was right, but years of conditioning made it difficult to fully accept. The hardest truth was realizing that, even now, after everything, my parents still saw Jackson as the priority and me as the solution to his problems. I wasn't a son to be loved. I was a resource to be tapped. The decision did not come easily or quickly. For weeks I struggled with guilt, obligation, and the deeply ingrained belief that turning away from family is unforgivable. Sleep became elusive as I wrestled with what to do. Lauren suggested I speak with a financial advisor of our own, and perhaps a therapist, to gain perspective. The financial advisor was unequivocal. Taking on the financial burden of supporting both my parents and potentially my brother would likely derail our own retirement plans and future security. The numbers simply didn't add up to a sustainable solution. She laid out projections, showing that even if we contributed significantly without fundamental changes in spending habits from my family, we would merely be delaying the inevitable while compromising our own financial health. Therapy proved equally valuable, though, in different ways. Dr. Marshall helped me understand that the dynamics in my family were not healthy or normal. "You were parentified from a young age," he explained during our third session. You were expected to be responsible and self-sufficient while your brother was infantilized and enabled. Now they are continuing that pattern, expecting you to be the responsible one who fixes everything. He introduced me to the concept of financial abuse and helped me see that my guilt was the product of years of conditioning. The hardest session was when he asked, if a friend came to you with this exact situation, what would you advise them to do? The answer was immediately clear when framed that way. I would tell them to protect themselves. Lauren never pressured me one way or another, but her perspective was clarifying. Families should lift each other up, not drain each other dry, she said one night as we sat on our back porch. There's a difference between helping in a crisis and enabling destructive patterns. Your parents and Jackson are asking for the latter, not the former. After much reflection, I made my decision. I would not provide open-ended financial support to my family. Instead, I offered an alternative. I would pay for financial counseling for my parents and help them develop a sustainable budget. I would assist my father in finding part-time consulting work suitable for his experience and age. For my mother, I offered to cover the cost of training that would allow her to increase her part-time teaching income. For Jackson, I offered to connect him with career counseling and perhaps help with reasonable education costs if he showed genuine interest in developing marketable skills. What I would not do was give money directly to him or take on their mortgages or debts. I presented this plan during another family meeting, explaining my reasoning clearly and compassionately. The response was worse than I anticipated. My father called me callous and ungrateful. My mother wept and asked where she had gone wrong raising me. Jackson stormed out halfway through, calling me a selfish bastard on his way out the door. Within days, the campaign against me began. Extended family members called or sent messages asking how I could abandon my parents in their time of need. Family friends whom I had barely spoken to in years reached out to express their disappointment. Jackson had made good on his threat, spinning a narrative where I, the successful son, was refusing to help my elderly parents out of pure selfishness. I wrote a long, heartfelt email to my parents explaining again my position and the reasons behind it. I detailed my own journey, the years of feeling secondary, the lack of support compared to what Jackson received, and my willingness to help in ways that would create lasting solutions rather than temporary fixes. I received no response. The breaking point came when Amanda created a social media post indirectly but clearly referring to me, describing how some people choose money over family and asking for prayers for my parents. The comments section filled with sympathetic responses from people who knew only one version of the story. After consulting again with Dr. Marshall, I made the painful decision to establish a temporary no-contact period. I needed space to heal and protect my mental health from the constant barrage of guilt and manipulation. I sent a final message to my parents, explaining that I would be stepping back from communication for a while, but that my offer of constructive help remained open, should they reconsider. The initial weeks of silence were both excruciating and liberating. I felt the weight of cultural and familial expectations pressing down on me, the voice in my head questioning if I was indeed the villain in this story. But gradually, that voice grew quieter as I continued therapy and found support in unexpected places. I joined an online support group for adults from families with toxic dynamics. Hearing others' stories that mirrored aspects of my own helped normalize my experience and validate my decision to establish boundaries. One participant said something that resonated deeply. Family obligation should not mean self-obliteration. Lauren remained my steadfast ally, never once suggesting that I should compromise my principles or financial security to appease my family. Our relationship deepened through the crisis, and 6 months into my no-contact period, we discovered she was pregnant. The news brought joy tinged with sadness at the family relationships that remained fractured. As we prepared for parenthood, I became even more certain of my decision. I wanted to create a family environment for my child that was balanced, healthy, and full of unconditional love, not one where favoritism and financial manipulation were normalized. 2 years passed with minimal contact. Then, unexpectedly, a letter arrived from my parents. The tone was different from any communication we had shared before. They acknowledged for the first time that they had treated Jackson and me differently throughout our lives. They admitted to enabling his irresponsible behavior and taking my reliability for granted. They had sought counseling of their own, and were beginning to understand the damage their actions had caused. They had sold their house and moved into a smaller, more affordable condo. My father had taken a part-time position as a financial literacy instructor at a community center. My mother was tutoring to supplement her pension. They were not asking for money, only for the possibility of reconciliation and the chance to meet their grandchild. Jackson, they told me, had refused to speak to them since they stopped providing financial support. Amanda had filed for divorce, citing financial problems as the reason. He was still not taking responsibility for his actions, still blaming others for his failures. I approached reconciliation cautiously, with clearly established boundaries. Our first meeting was at a neutral location, a restaurant halfway between our homes. Seeing my parents interact with my daughter Sophia was a complex emotional experience. There was joy in the connection, but also vigilance on my part, a determination to ensure that old patterns would not affect a new generation. Over time, we built a new kind of relationship, one based on mutual respect rather than obligation. They never again asked for financial support, and I noticed their genuine interest in my life and accomplishments, a stark contrast to the dismissive attitude of the past. We would never have the conventional parent-child bond that others might take for granted, but we had found a way forward that honored truth while allowing for healing. The experience taught me that sometimes the most loving thing you can do, both for yourself and others, is to establish firm boundaries. That real family support means encouraging independence and responsibility, not enabling dependency. That self-respect is not selfishness, and that breaking unhealthy patterns requires courage but yields freedom. Today, as I watch Sophia grow, I am committed to ensuring she never questions her worth or feels that she must earn love through achievement or sacrifice. The cycle ends with me. Have you ever had to make a difficult decision to protect your own well-being despite family pressure? I would love to hear your experiences in the comments below. If this story resonated with you, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel for more real-life experiences and lessons learned. Share this with someone who might need to hear that setting boundaries is not just okay, it's necessary for healing. Thank you for listening to my journey. And remember that choosing yourself isn't selfish, it's essential for building a healthy life.